Every club. Every day. The Global Sports Podcast Network.
Hello everybody, you're listening to Daily Wolves. I'm your host Will, and in what feels like quite a rare occasion, there's a full house here today at the Daily Wolves team, as I'm joined by Nathan. Nathan, hello.
Hi Will, hi Chris, how are we doing everyone? It is a weird feeling, isn't it? Three of us, all in one go.
Yeah, and of course, as Nathan just said, there's also Chris.
There is indeed. Hey everyone, happy Tuesday. I'm happy again, it's Tuesday.
I was going to say, as soon as you said happy Tuesday, because you certainly could not say happy Monday yesterday.
I couldn't. But do you know why I can say happy Tuesday? Because we were going to drive with this anyway, is we've just seen the FA Cup draw for who Wolves are going to get in the third round of the FA Cup. And it just fills me with nostalgia because Bristol City away, I've said it before, that was actually my first ever experience of a live Wolves game. Back in like 1994, my first live game was like in person, was going to see Wolves away in Bristol City, where my brother was living at the time. And so it just brings all those memories flooding back. So, hey, I'm living the nostalgia dream today.
It's also memories for Will because obviously his pal scored the winner there a few seasons ago, didn't he?
Mm-hmm. His big mate Ryan Bennett. You got there before me.
You're going to ring him up before the game.
Yeah, you know what? I should call him up, get him on the pod. No, absolute hero. Absolute hero is our Ryan. And yeah, I mean, Nathan, you beat me to it. Whenever I now hear Bristol City, I think, like every Wolves fan of recent times, I just think of that last minute header.
And me.
And you,
and Chris,
you,
obviously.
Yeah. My nostalgia dream. Go with it.
And Nuno's celebration in the stand, where he's giving it to all the supporters in front of him. Absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, the slight delay there as Will was deciding what to say was because I was pointing at myself as he was saying it. I was like, and me.
No, my apologies. I was just still too busy thinking of Ryan Bennett, which I think is fair enough.
I will say though, are we thinking that this is given how the season has been such, a dive bombing roller coaster so far, is Bristol City away a potential banana skin? I mean, it just feels like we should cakewalk it, but with everything that's gone on, I really don't know what to expect.
Yeah, I mean, I'm still too worried about us in the league to even be asked by the FA Cup, which I don't like. I don't like. I love the FA Cup, but just as you alluded to, I don't know about you, Nathan, but I'm still too worried about our sort of relegation fight that we found ourselves in.
Yeah, I'm of the same opinion. I think. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if he plays Alfie Pond at centre half and sort of Tommy Doyle in midfield and kind of rotates it a little bit. Maybe give Guedes another run out, bump his transfer fee up a little bit or something like that.
I think we'll see full sale changes. Like it'll be virtually an entire second string, which is a decent second string, to be fair.
Yeah, I mean, it can't be a million times worse than the first string currently, which leads me perfectly on to my next sort of talking point, which is that obviously you two have already given your thoughts on the game against Bournemouth at the weekend, and it's probably just as well that I'm only just joining us here on the podcast after a day or two's time to rest, recuperate, reflect and look back on things. And after all of that, I still hate O'Neill. No, but what I will say is you there's a lot of things that weren't Gary's fault and what have you against Bournemouth. And I think that's clear for everyone to see. But the one thing that I don't understand, and I know you guys spoke about yesterday, was the starting 11. Because you only played the defence that you played against Fulham. And don't get me wrong, we got a great result. I think due to Fulham being off it on the day and also Cunha being well and truly on it. And don't get me wrong, the defence did fine, but you only played that defence because we had injured players. And so when Dawson and Bueno are both back fit enough to be on the bench, and fit enough to play in the case of Dawson. And I dare say Breno was as well. He was never going to get subbed on. I just don't get why you'd lead with that starting 11. I just can't. I can't wrap my head around it.
It's mental. It's not like the starting back four against Fulham was a stroke of genius from O'Neill. We're going to play Lamina at centre half to try and shoot, get everyone into the starting lineup and everything. He was forced to play that back four. So, we spoke about it in the previous episodes. When you get a chance to then play Premier League experienced centre halves instead of a centre mid at centre half, then I don't know, just do it.
Yeah, and I said yesterday, whenever it was we recorded that episode, because it's all a blur now, but that I also have this firm belief that it just, because it kind of worked the week before, it gave him an easy way out to play all of the midfielders that he's too scared to drop. Because I firmly believe that.
No, and I don't disagree. I just, that's strike number one, Gary, as far as I'm concerned. So already, as soon as we kicked off, I don't know, I felt a bit uneasy being at the game with the lineup, and I was never 100% confident, and that was only made worse when Totti dived in just needlessly. Lamina out of position, Nathan, as you spoke about yesterday. Fun facts about Totti. I'm not going to go into too much detail for obvious reasons, but I found out where he lived the other day. He only lives around the corner from me.
Oh, I thought you were going to go with the fact that he was playing rugby up until the age of 16.
No, but that is also true. He should have stuck to it, to be honest. No, that's
that's a bit mean.
No, I'm joking. Because, and this was a point that as soon as the full-time whistle blew, I was annoyed I couldn't get on recording with you guys, because my overall worry, perhaps not just necessarily after yesterday's game, but you see the likes of Lamina getting slated and not having his best game, playing out of position. He's not had his best season even when he has been in position. Players like Totti, who I have a laugh and joke about, but in all seriousness, Chris, just so you can rest assured, I do actually rate him as a defender. He's a solid centre half. And my worry is, go on, sorry, Chris.
And to be fair to Totti, he's playing alongside someone who isn't a regular centre back, so he's arguably trying to pick up pieces, as you spoke about, when he's not even the most experienced centre back there is, and he's suddenly in the formation where he's got to lead. Essentially, arguably, I know Lemina's the captain, but he's the more experienced person in that back line.
Yeah, 100%. But we've only got O'Neill to thank for that. And speaking of the defence, Sarr as well obviously had a stinker, in all honesty, at times. But what I don't understand is you're not playing to these players' strengths. We know Sarr can't play that well with the ball at his feet. So why are we insisting on doing it? Again, I'll sound like a broken record if I go down that track, but we're however many games in and it's still happening. It's just stupid. Same with Totti. He's a solid defender, and he can drop the shoulder every now and then and play a ball down the line, but just do that. Just play simple. I don't get why we're trying to play hospital balls between the two of them. And this was my overall point. Those are three good players, up until now well respected and rated players amongst the fans here, that I feel really bad for, in terms of their reputation is being dragged down by consistently playing this weird system that O'Neill's persisting with. Those are my thoughts on it, at least.
Yeah, I know. I was thinking about Sarr as well, because obviously there's been a lot of press coverage about him taking some flack, and there was an incident in the crowd and all sorts of stuff. But arguably, yes, he's not been good on the ball in that game yet again at points, but of the goals, he's only really strongly at fault for one of them, because the first penalty is nothing to do with him. The second goal is a rocket. I know it's at the near post, but it's an absolute rocket, and it takes a slight deflection. And I'll get to Will in a second. But he, then the one penalty is his fault, but then the other one he's played into a terrible position by Dawson. So for most of that game, he hasn't actually. He's conceded 4 goals, but he's not actually at fault for much of it.
No, and that was exactly my point in terms of those 3 goals that he wasn't at fault for were direct defensive mistakes. I think the second one probably overlooked because of the nature of the other 3. Just being completely overloaded on that right hand side. Lamina and Semedo just, it was like they weren't there almost. And when it's, when it goes in like that, like you said, I know it's near post, but he had no chance really. But I just don't understand why we're so persistent in trying to play this way. Again, when it's just proven to not work. And the Sarr incident you mentioned, I just wanted to know what are your thoughts on that. For those who don't know, he had an altercation with a fan, and it started. I remember seeing it towards the end of the first half, and then sort of came to a climax at half time.
Yeah, he must be getting some stick though. I mean, he's made a couple of errors, well, a few errors in his Wolves career, obviously so far, and I think it's a really difficult position to be in as a goalkeeper who's conceding that many goals in a squad that's obviously shot of confidence defensively, and it seems to only be in those situations where the goalkeepers react. I mean, if you notice moments in Premier League history where goalkeepers bubble over, it tends to always be when they're in that sort of, pressure cooker environment. And I obviously don't know what exactly was being said, but the fan was escorted out. So, obvious, and apparently from what we could hear is that the South Bank actually turned on the fan and kind of realised that whatever he had said, whatever that fan had said, was obviously not something that was resonating with the rest of the crowd. Like we've all had a little moan at a player when they've done something wrong, but obviously that was crossing a line.
Yeah, and I mean, arguably, you are being paid a lot of money, and you're supposed to be a professional, and as a footballer, you're going to take some flack, but also he's the one person on the pitch that's going to hear it the most because he stood right by the crowd for the entirety of the game, and the pitches are pretty close now to especially the South Bank end. That is like as close as it can be, and so he's taking all of that flack all of the time. And again, it's all hearsay at the moment, but the rumors going around are that some of the stuff that the reason the rest of the crowd turned on that person is because some of those stuff were potentially derogatory about nationality and other aspects of him. They got quite personal, so you can almost understand.
Yeah, no, I'll be honest, I have a soft spot for Sarr. I really rate him highly. I just really don't think we're playing to his strengths, and I know he has a mistake in him regardless, but just don't emphasize that by putting him in that pressure cooker environment that you spoke about, Nathan. And I do like it that he, I think as that fan, if you can give it all, you've got to be able to expect a reaction. And I know, Chris, you talk about being professional, but I don't know, I've got a bit of time for footballers who show their emotion, regardless of if it's good or bad. And the one thing I did want to also highlight was the South Bank, not just turning on the fan, that individual, but supporting Sarr and getting his chant going. I think, that was a nice touch at least.
Yeah, I think overall, the Wolves fan base is generally pretty classy as fan bases go. We saw it with the way the away fans treated Jimenez at Fulham and stuff like that. Overall, I think as a fan base, we are pretty fantastic. Obviously, when things get a bit toxic, like any club, it can go a bit sour. But even when, they're giving banter or giving some flack, there's a way to do it, right? And there's a way not to do it. And clearly it just got a bit too far from someone.
Yeah, it's all about how you deliver your emotions as a fan when you're in the sort of, that environment up close to the players. And speaking of delivering things, here at the Global Sports Podcast Network, we spent a lot of time selecting our delivery platform. Zencastr came out the clear winner. With 4K video recording from your phone and AI editing that automatically removes all those ums and ahs, it's super easy to start a podcast that sounds great and is delivered efficiently. If you're ready to tell your story, check out the link in the show description to learn more about Zencastr. But yeah, I think, I'll conclude my thoughts on Bournemouth by simply picking out one moment that I did enjoy about the game, which is when the Bournemouth fans started chanting, "Gary, what's the score?" And the Wolves fans, me being one of them, joined in. Maybe that was wrong of me. But it's time to put it behind us now, as the games are coming thick and fast in this winter period. And Chris, we travel to your favourite team on a Wednesday. So it's Everton away. What are you guys expecting?
I mean, before, earlier in the season, I would have said this is, much like when we go and play the likes of Ipswich or Southampton, that this is a game we should be winning. But even at Goodison Park, this is a game we should be winning. And it's been well spoken of that I feel that they are due their turn at relegation. However, given everything that's going on, I'm slightly scared, I'll be honest.
Yeah, Nathan, are you confident, or are you, how are you rating our chances?
Confident at the minute is a thing of the past, but Everton have gone 4 games without scoring, and if we're gonna,
they've not played us yet.
They've not played us yet, exactly. So if they wanted to play any team in the league at this moment in time, it'd probably be us. And if we wanted to play any team in the league right now, it might actually be them. So it's a really weird fixture for both clubs, and it's massive. It's obviously a 6-pointer, 2 points ahead of us, and it's a huge game. It's a huge game.
Yeah, I think what I will say is, if I were an Everton fan right now, I'd be a lot more confident than I am now as a Wolves fan. Do you know what I mean? I think, as you mentioned, if there was a team that they would want to play right now, it would be us, I think. Just with how topsy-turvy we are, and how shaky we are at the back. And I know we just spent a lot of time talking about it. But Chris, I just want to ask you the question of, do you think we'll see the return of Sam Johnson in goal after Saturday's antics, or would you stick with Sarr?
I mean, personally, I would stick with Sarr, because I feel, as we mentioned, he was only really directly at fault for one of those incidents, and I feel that he's still personally the best shot stopper, even though he's arguably not as good with the ball at his feet. I haven't seen enough of Johnson in a Wolves shirt to really make that decision, because he wasn't in the starting lineup for very long. But I do think that on his day, outside of his mistakes, and all crazy goalkeepers are capable of crazy mistakes, but he is, on his day, when he's on form, capable of some amazing worldy saves. I genuinely believe that. So I think he's worth the risk reward at the moment of the choices we have. I'd keep him in the starting lineup.
Yeah, Nathan, do you share those views?
I didn't say he would be, by the way. That I just said that I would keep him.
Well, I do think Gary O'Neill's going to stick with him, because I don't know. I think it's the mentality behind that. Well, post the game against Bournemouth should be, in my opinion, to just forget that. Let's focus on the 4 previous results to that game, and how the good form that we were in and the good habits that we were forming and that sort of stuff, rather than, saying, oh, this is back to the same problems as before. So just kind of like, brush that under the carpet and crack on. And I think to be able to do that, you probably need to back some of the players that have made some of those mistakes. I'm obviously hoping for Lamina to move into one of his original position. Or even I don't know if he actually deserves to be in that position, given the form of Gomez and Andre. Because let's be real, most players on the pitch, other than maybe Strand Larsen, had an off day on Saturday. So it'll be an interesting one. But in my opinion, I would still go for Sarr. Yeah,
well, I'm glad that we're all in agreement on that one. As I said, I've got a soft spot for Sarr anyway, and I do just think he's simply better. Full stop. So that's it's just a weird one. It's just, I think, Chris, I don't mean to go off on a tangent here, but earlier in the summer transfer window when we first started recording together, Nathan, before you were with us,
Before my arrival.
At no point did I think, oh, I'll be debating between who's starting for us after losing 4-2 at home to Bournemouth. Saul, Sam Johnston. It's just, if you told me that, it's just such a weird situation we find ourselves in.
Yeah, it is crazy. And I think the biggest, I am curious about so many decisions in this game and what Gary Neville's going to do. I'm curious about the back line. I mean, I would like to see, I want Bueno back in. I think at the moment he's actually one of the best defenders we've got. From what I've seen in the form that we've seen, and I feel sorry for him constantly. And we speak about belief, and Gary Neville giving belief to players, but the back line can't have much belief. Feel like they're being given much belief because they've had this whole thing of playing in a back four, but it was Mosquera and Totti for large periods in pre-season. Then the earlier part of the season, Dawson wasn't in that lineup. Bueno wasn't in that lineup. Then we've gone to 5 and then back to 4 at points, and we've gone 3. It's all, and it's constantly fluid. But and then we've had Mario Lemina in there, yes, for an emergency, but now played over centre backs who, yes, I get they're coming back from full fitness, but still they are starting centre backs. And I just feel like it doesn't feel like they have found a set formation at the back still this far into the season. And the centre backs must be thinking, well, who is the starter, and do you have faith in me? Because I'm on the bench and then I'm shifted from one spot to another.
I'll answer that for them. Is that Gary doesn't have a clue, and there appears to be no faith in any of them. It's just
but it's foundations, right? We talk about foundations, and surely we talk about stability at the back. So surely by doing that, you need to keep something needs to be rigid there and stick with it.
Well, I think that's what we all expected when Dawson came on against Bournemouth. That experience and that sort of reliability that we've come to associate with him, and it never quite happened.
Yeah, I think one of the main things that's going to be really interesting going into the Everton game is Everton and Sean Dyche as a club over the past couple of years, they haven't reinvented the wheel. They're very solid in the way they set up. They pride themselves on their solidity defensively, even though that hasn't been too great this season. And they've got strikers that are always physical. I mean, that Beto and Calvert-Lewin, they're always physical and will cause a threat from set pieces. And they're going to put you under pressure through their intensity. And having done their homework on how we've just played against Bournemouth, they're going to look at us as a frail team because we showed absolutely no backbone. So I think the main thing Gary O'Neill needs to do is get his players on his own tea regime. So get them having about 50 cups of tea on the day leading up to it. It might not be good for the old toilet visits, but they really do need to be up for it and caffeinated and ready for the intensity because Sean Dyche is not going to take any prisoners. They need results as well as us.
No, not at all. Before we look at this fixture in any more detail, I'd like to give a quick reminder that this podcast is part of the Global Sports Podcast Network, the only network bringing you exclusive daily news and views on your Premier League team, the Premier League, women's football and fantasy football. The unique listening experience that puts fans first, bringing you the very latest breaking news from your team. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and make us your first listen every day. Global Sports Podcast Network, every club,
every day.
But yeah, no, I think one thing I do just want to ask you guys, looking ahead towards Everton, you've both spoken about defensive solidity. And when you say that, is that purely going to be personnel? Obviously, Semedo will be missing the game for picking up too many yellow cards.
Call the doctor.
O'Neill's golf buddy Doherty, I assume, will start. But yeah, I'm just wondering, would you guys, Chris, would you go for a back 4 or a back 5?
Gosh, man, I think it's a tricky one, but I think actually I'd probably go with the 4. And I think because, so I think I would potentially go Aït-Nouri, Dawson, Bueno, Doc, and then in midfield, because I was going to get onto I know you're speaking about the back line, but formation-wise, again, because I think not many people have clamped positions down in the front section outside of Cunha and Larson. Bellegarde in the last game, he provided the cross, but outside of that, I didn't feel like he was massively involved. So I would like to see. I'd put Lamina on the bench. I'd have Gomez and Andre in midfield, and then before we go any further in the line,
can I just ask? Benching Lamina, and no Semedo, who would be your captain?
That's a good question. I mean, it's probably going to be Dawson, right?
Yeah, I think it'd be between him or, even though I've just made fun of him, I think it'd be between him or Doc.
Yeah, but it's probably Dawson, maybe Doc because of his history with the club as well. But Doyle is vice captain. But if you don't start him, then obviously it's not relevant. But yeah, so I'd go Gomez and Andre midfield, and then so obviously you've got Cunha and Larson, and then the other spots up for grabs. I think Gedge at this point has earned the starting position on one of those wings, whichever one. I mean, he scored in the cup, he scored in the league. He always looks threatening. He deserves a start at this point.
He's earned it. Will he get it?
But you want to create a culture where players earn their starts, right?
Yeah.
Like you want to. I mean, at some point it's got to happen, regardless of whether he wants to stay at the club or not. If his performances are good on the pitch, then just play him.
And then the other flank is up for grabs. And you've got so many options, whether it's Gomez, whether it's Forbes, whether it's even Sarabia. Like I think there's options up there.
Sorry, I know that I said that we're leaving Bournemouth behind, but you just reminded me there by mentioning Rodrigo Gomez.
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was actually really cowardly from O'Neill to take Gomez off at half-time against Bournemouth as if he had been the issue. Now, I get that it was to tweak the shape, but when you spoke about Bellegarde not offering much, I really don't think he offered much. And I thought, in all fairness to Gomez, he runs more and he runs quicker and works harder. I just thought it was cowardly because, you take the kid off because he's not going to complain, and neither is anybody else. But yeah, it's. I mean, when you look at it all like that, so what you've just said essentially, Chris, is the defence. There's no sort of set fixtures in there that of any reliability at least, or there hasn't been so far. So spots up for grabs there. We all know the situation with the midfield four, so those are all up for grabs. And apart from Cunha and Larson, the spots up for grabs all fun. So it's in a weird way that's good as a manager, is it not?
You'd think so, wouldn't you? You'd think that having all these options, and as we've been saying for so long, they are quality options.
Mm-hmm.
Surely that's all a good thing, and he can sort of figure out a way to mould it together. One thing that I'm interested with is if he'll actually, with the absence of Semedo and given how sort of adventurous Aït-Nouri can be on the one side, Semedo often provides that balance, and he's a lot more disciplined defensively. I'm interested to see whether he just goes, let's just have a back five with Doc as a wing back, because he was always best when he was playing wing back rather than the back four. And then at least you're not having Doc having to defend one-on-one as much. And if he is, he's got cover with Bueno, Dawson coming back to full fitness. There's maybe an opportunity there to go back five, and Aït-Nouri's better in a five, or is allowed to go forward more in a five. So yeah, it'd be interesting.
Well, if it's a four, along the lines of what I suggested, I think what you'll see is whenever Aït-Nouri would be allowed to roam, and it essentially becomes a three with Dawson, Bueno, and Doc, because Doc can play that position as like a back three. And I think he would be the more hold it because he hasn't got the pace now. I think he would be asked to hold more with those three as a back three, and then Aït-Nouri can roam. But when we need to be more defensive, Aït-Nouri can drop back.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah.
So just to conclude, and maybe this is wrong of me because it may lead us to concluding on a slightly pessimistic note. But I won't ask for score predictions. But just Nathan, I'll come to you first. How do you see the game panning out? You spoke there. You might you would potentially go for back five. You've spoken about Everton struggling to score goals lately. What do you see happening?
I think that Sean Dyche is going to focus going to have a massive focus on just not conceding. They've conceded a lot of goals over the last 4 games, and they've not scored over the last 4 games. But I think his first instinct as a manager, given sort of the history of him and Prem with different teams, would be to shut up shop. And I think that's going to be his focus. And our focus is probably the same, to be fair.
Yeah.
So I can see it kind of cancelling each other out. And I wouldn't be against just a boring draw. So that's I think the way that both managers are going to approach it is with caution. I mean, it's a massive game. It is a 6-pointer, but Wolves would be happy coming away with a draw, and Everton would be happy coming away with a draw as well. So,
Chris, sorry, Nathan, didn't mean to cut you off, but Chris, I could see you nodding there. Does that tell me that you agree?
I was agreeing with the facts in my head that I think it's a game that both sides don't want to lose more than anything. Like neither one wants to lose this game. I think that's the biggest factor in this. It's even less about the winning than it is just not losing for both these teams at this point in this fixture. So I think a draw, be it a stink the place out 0-0 or just a 1-1 or something, I don't want it. I want the 3 points, but I can see it.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair enough, and I agree with both of you guys. It certainly strikes us as a game that's more of a case of jeopardy for both teams if they were to lose. I mean, we've spoken about Everton's fans and fan bases in the atmosphere before, and we know our own and what it can be like if it gets toxic. So yeah, I think we'll be focusing on, as you say, not losing as opposed to seeing it as an absolute must-win. But yeah, I think that concludes us for today's episode. I'm about to go and knock on Totti Gomez's door, telling him to stop playing out the back. And Nathan and Chris, it's been lovely for the three of us to be together again for recording. And Chris, I'll let you do the honours. And say your line.
Just remember, people, out of darkness cometh light.
Thank you.
Every club, every day. The Global Sports Podcast Network.